Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. So in today's video, I'm going to do a part 2 of this T95 mini Android TV box because I think it was important to emphasize on some more things that I've discovered while using these things. So first and foremost, let's talk about who this is for. So this is an alternative to a Raspberry Pi, right? So it's very cheap. Well, I wouldn't say very cheap, but it's decently priced. So $29 on Amazon, you can get these things. I certainly recommend the T95 Mini, specifically because it's using the all-winner H6 processor, which is a ARM Cortex A53 processor. It's a quad core. It's a very popular processor these days. So, and so it's tried and true, and this is well supported with Armbian Linux. So Armbian Linux is what this uses. I will also put a link in the description of the specific build that I'm using for this as well, so you guys can install it on there. But this is for those who are looking for a Raspberry Pi 4 alternative, because this is just as powerful. Maybe not using a newer processor, but again, this is still a quad core, so it still can get the job done. It's also clocked a little higher. In the Linux build, you can actually downclock this if you want to. You can run it conservative or run it at full performance. You actually have a lot of options with this build, the Linux build that I'm going to install. But I'm not going to show that today. What I'm really going to show is one feature that I like about this, that I've discovered while using this and replacing all my Raspberry Pi 4s with this, is you can actually install Klipper on the OS in total. So Klipper, the OS, everything on the actual built-in storage, which is the eMMC, or the NAND flash memory, however you want to describe the type of storage it's using. You can actually install it on here, which is really nice. So you don't have to keep the SD card in the SD card slot in order to use it. So that was really nice. And two, the Wi-Fi also works. So prior to when I first did my first video on this product, I don't think the Wi-Fi was working the greatest, but now with the newer build, the Wi-Fi actually works really well. So so I'm going to go ahead and do all of that and show you the installation. But I want to say this is definitely worth the purchase. You don't have to worry about input shaper, because it does work on here. If you can grab yourself a Pi Pico, you can actually use that method of plugging it via USB and run the input shaper method that way, instead of using the GPIO pins on the Raspberry Pi 4 like you would. So I would say this: if you're a person that use the GPIO pins on a Raspberry Pi 4 or Raspberry Pis in general, then this may not be for you, because your dependencies on those GPIO pins. However, in my case, I never really use the GPIO pins other than using input shaper. So, and because now you can use input shaper via USB, there's no need for me to even worry about the GPIO pins, unless you're using it for niche products or a niche with 3D printing. So again, really good alternative to a Raspberry Pi 4, and it will get the job done really well. And so now I'm going to just kind of show you what it looks like. So this is usually the housing that it comes in. Clearly I have it out of the housing. The housing is a little bulky for me. You can actually keep it in the housing if you have space. For example, in my Voron 2.4, I actually kept the housing on, and I'll just kind of sticky tape it down because there was enough space for it. But what I've been doing lately is actually taking it out of housing and actually running it just bare bones with some active cooling on there. Now, some of these tend to run a little warmer than some, depending on how they apply thermal paste on the processor, and there's a little heat sink. Now, on the inside of this housing, if I can actually get back off the cover here, let me see if I can get the cover off. Yeah, there's actually a heat sink, a massive heat sink with thermal pad in order to keep this cool. But like I said, I prefer racking it without it, without the housing because I'm gonna have active cooling on this, so it will keep it cool. So without any further ado, I just wanted to show you what it looked like. So now we're gonna go ahead and go install Armbian Linux, as well as Klipper, Moonraker, Mainsail, as well as show you how to set it up with Wi-Fi, and also how to install the whole operating system, Klipper and all, onto the actual built-in storage, so that way you don't have to use your SD card on there. So let's get into it. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna transition to my screen so we can start the process there. Alright, so now that we're on our screen, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of show you where you need to go. So first place you would need to go is, I'm gonna put a link in the description. You want to go here. Let me click on here. This is my link. I try to keep the links. So this is the GitHub that you visit. It's github.com/awawa-dev. So I'm gonna put a link in that description so you can actually visit their site. Where you're gonna go is, if you click on repository, you go scroll all the way down till you see where it says build. Now notice what it says underneath here. It says Armbian Linux firmware for Tanix TX6 TV box All-Winner 8.6. This is essentially what this is, because it's using an All-Winner 8.6 processor. So this is that build for it. So if you click on build, also keep in mind that this build has been aged. It's from March 8, 2022, which was about a year ago. But it still works because you can always update it. Alright, so if you click on this, you get a variety of different builds. So you get your standard builds with just command line. You get another build with command line but on the voltage, so if you want it on the voltage. And there's another build that has the desktop. So if you're about to use the desktop, you can on here. But in this case, we're just going to stick with a standard build. So once that's done and you download it, you download the image. You can use whatever imager you prefer, but I'm going to use the Raspberry Pi imager in this case. I'm going to go ahead and choose my OS. So you go to use custom. I'm going to click on it here because I already have it downloaded. So as you guys can see, I'm going to press open. Then since I already have my SD card already populated in, I'm just going to select that. Now the difference is, unlike the Raspberry Pi where you can put in your Wi-Fi information here and your host name and that stuff, it doesn't really work for this device. Okay, it's not supported by the image in this manner. So we're going to do that after the fact. So we're going to go ahead and write this to the SD card, and then once it's done, we'll continue. Alright, so now that it is done, we're going to hit continue here. We no longer need this for right now since the SD card is image. So I'm going to go ahead and pop my SD card out, and we're going to move to the main so you guys can see what I'm doing. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pop the SD card in here. So we're going to go ahead and put the SD card in. Now, the micro SD card, however, in my previous video of doing the T95 mini, you actually saw that I had to press a boot button here, which allowed to do U-booting, right? So you were able to, you had to press it initially in order to get the micro SD, in order to get the device to boot to the micro SD card in this case. Now you can actually just pop it in and power it up, and it actually boots automatically to the SD card. I'm not sure what change happened there, but you don't no longer have to put that push down that boot button in order for it to select the SD card. It will do it as long as it's plugged in. Alright, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and plug in my Ethernet cable because Wi-Fi won't initially work, so you need a Ethernet cable or hardwire in this case, in order for it to pick up on the network. And we're gonna go ahead and plug it in. Now that's plugged in, as you can see, there's a red light. Now, if this was blue, that means it didn't detect your SD card, and your image may not have been written on the SD card properly. But now it's red. I know it picks up my SD card, and it's just a matter of time to just check to make sure that I get a IP address for it. So we're gonna move back to the desktop here, and we're gonna check to see if it actually got on the network. So I'm gonna open another browser space. I'm gonna go log into my router, my wireless router. I'm gonna sign in, and I'm gonna wait till it detects. Now, it might not pop up yet, but we're gonna check just to see if it comes up. If it does come up, it will say Tonix TX6, so I know it actually is on the network. But if it doesn't say that yet, that means it hasn't picked up yet. And looking through this list, it's clearly not here yet, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit refresh. Now, your router might be different from mine, but the concept is the same. You log into your router and see what new device pops up on your router. So as you can see, now I know it's connected because this wasn't here before. And like I said, I've done this many a times. So it says Tonix TX6. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna lower this down. We're gonna launch PuTTY. So I'm gonna be using PuTTY as my source of SSH into this machine. So we know it's 192.168.1.27. We're gonna open. Since we're connecting for the first time, it tells you about the server host key and some potential security breach. Just go ahead and hit yes. The first time logging in, the username is root. Okay, so root, and the password is 1234. This is your first time logging in if you're using this image. Okay, I will put a link in the description for it. Now it's going to ask you to create a root password. I'm going to go ahead and do so. Now it's going to ask you to choose a default system command shell. I'm going to use bash in this case. Now it says provide a name. I'm going to call it Pi, just to keep it similar to a regular Raspberry Pi setup. And now it's asking for a password, so I'm going to go ahead and type that in. And it's asking for the real name. I'm still going to keep it at Pi, as Pi here. Now it's detecting the correct time zone for me, so I'm going to hit yes. And now it needs locales, so I'm going to go ahead and select 1. Now it's generating those locales real quick. And then when it's done, we'll continue. Okay, so now that's done. So since we're in root user with QI, you cannot install QI, which is what we're going to use to install main cell, Klipper, and all that good jazz. You cannot install that as root user in the root user account side. So we're going to do exit, and it will close the window, but we're going to relaunch a window into the regular directory here with regular privilege. So it still says it's there. Let's see. Exit. There we go. All right, we no longer need this anymore, so we're going to close this. All right. So we're going to relaunch PuTTY. Now we're going to log in with the information we created. So the login now for me is Pi and the password I created. Okay. So now we are actually not in the root account and then actually the main Pi account. So now we need to install QI. So we're going to visit the website for QI. You can just type it in Google. As you can see, I've done it many times here. I'll put a link in the description for this as well. Just hit the copy button here and go ahead and paste it there and hit enter. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to install QI. Then we're going to install Klipper. Now, in this case, this T95 Mini will be going to into my K3. I decided not to use the Raspberry Pi 4 I have. I'm going to go ahead and use this T95 Mini instead. Now, there's a little bit of an issue with the dockable probe or the quick draw probe from Annex. It is the script is not updated with Python 3 in mind, so there's an issue if you have the latest Python 3 and try to run this the dockable probe script macros, it won't work. So we have to go back to Python 2.7 legacy. So that's what I'm going to install on here. So I'm going to choose number 2, but in any other situation you will use number 1, the latest Python. Okay. So it's asking me how much instance of Klipper that I want to set up. In this case, I'm going to run 1. And now it's installing and pulling all the files that it needs to install Klipper. Okay, so I'm not going to bore you with this. I'm going to make it easy for you by resuming when it's done. Okay guys, so now that's done, we can go ahead and now do number 2, which is Moonraker, and we're going to go ahead and install that. It says install Moonraker, question mark, but we're going to, of course we want it, so yes, Y for yes. And again, it's going to pull down from the all the repository, and keep in mind the flavor I'm using for this Armbian Linux is from Debian Bullseye, so I seem to work for me very well. But again, not to bore you with a bunch of installs, I'm gonna save you the time and skip to the next install. Okay guys, so now that we have Moonraker installed, now it's time for main cell. Now you can do main cell or fluid. I kind of want to do fluid in this case just to change it up a little bit. I haven't done fluid in a long time, so I'm going to go with fluid in this case. So I'm going to hit 4 and I'm going to go with fluid. I kind of like both. The rest of my printers are all running main cell, but in this case I would like to give fluid a try and see any changes that they have made to it so far. So again, not to bore you with all installs, so I'm going to make it fast by doing a time skip for you guys. Now that we have fluid installed, the last thing I would like to install, even though I won't install a screen yet, I just want to make sure it's there when I need it, I'm going to go ahead and install Klipper screen. So I'm going to go ahead, install Klipper screen, and we're going to do another time skip, save you guys some time. Okay guys, so now it's all done. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to exit QI, install it, quit it. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do, we're going to set up the Wi-Fi. In order to do that, we're going to go visit this site. This, I'm going to put a link in the description, but this is Armbian documentation. This is how to install Armbian Linux on these Android type devices. That means, you know, your Banana Pi, your Orange Pi. It doesn't work for Raspberry Pi, but you know, your Rock Pi, basically your one-offs are basically a Raspberry Pi copycat-ish boards. This is what the Armbian Linux is for. Raspberry Pi Lite image is for Raspberry Pi, but this is for all of the other third-party Linux board. Okay, this is how they install it. But I already showed you that guide. But this, we're going to go through this website to run a command so we can trigger and install our Wi-Fi. So I'm scrolling down, and I'm gonna run this right here. This. So we're gonna copy this and go ahead and paste it, and then we're gonna come down right here. I'm gonna click on that. I'm gonna put my Wi-Fi password in. Now, of course, this is my Wi-Fi. Your Wi-Fi broadcast might say something else. SSID might say whatever you want it to be. But this is my my SSID for my wireless router. So I'm gonna put the password in. I'm gonna press OK. And now we're connected. So now it deactivated. I think it just automatically deactivated my wireless, my Ethernet. So as you can see, it automatically deactivated my Ethernet. Now, if I wanted to, I can come over here and activate back my Ethernet port. But in this case, since I'm going to run it wireless with the K3 printer, I'm going to go ahead and unplug my Ethernet port here because I no longer need it, and I'm going to exit this here. Since I unplug it, I'm just going to go ahead and exit it, and it should now be on. I think I didn't deactivate it yet, but let me make sure I deactivate it first. Oh, I think I plugged it out a little too early there, guys. Give me 1 second. Alright, guys, so it's officially deactivated my Ethernet port, so now I'm going to unplug it. Now I got to go back to my wireless router to see the new IP address. So I'm going to go back. It's detecting device, so it should be a new IP address now. And so as you can see, that was my previous IP address with the wired connection. Now with the 2.4 wireless, now this is my new IP address, right? So now, when I go back to PuTTY, now we can close this because I no longer need this information anymore. So when we go back to our PuTTY session, we can just put 0 here, hit open, yes. We're gonna log back in. So as you can see, the wireless, now it's wireless. So as a proof of concept, I want to show you guys that it is. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my main desktop, as you guys can see. And I'm going to show you that the Ethernet is no longer plugged in, okay? So it's no longer plugged in. So now we're completely wireless. So let's go back to desktop. So now that we're wireless, the next thing to do, we want to install the information from the micro SD card onto the built-in storage of this device, right? So we don't have to use the micro SD card at all, right? So that's the next step. So now, let's do that. All right, guys. So now we're going to install the Klipper image / Armbian Linux onto the storage device. I know I've said this before, but now we're going to go ahead and do that. So what we want to run is this here. You see where it says Armbian configuration utility? We're going to trigger this by running a sudo Armbian -config, okay? Similar to Raspberry config, but we're going to do a sudo Armbian -config. So alright, so we're going to hit enter. It's asking for the password. So now it's going to trigger this utility, okay? Next, we're going to hit enter because we want to go to system. Next, we're gonna click on install, and you see where it says boot from eMMC, system on eMMC. We're gonna hit enter there. It says this script will erase your eMMC. Continue. Yes, we want to. Now we're gonna select the first option, which is ext4. And what it's doing now is erasing the eMMC that's built onto the device, and it's gonna port and copy all the files from the SD card onto the built-in storage. And I think this is the feature I wanted to highlight, that this is really, really cool. And then once this is done, then I can go ahead and update the system itself. The problem is, if you update the system before you do this, this option will go away. Okay, I'm not sure why, but when I updated it prior to doing this, I didn't get the install option any further. So before you do any updates, make sure you port over, make sure you install it to the eMMC first, and then you can do all of the system updates and package upgrade like you usually would with Linux systems. So I'm gonna let this go ahead and do its thing, and then we'll come back just to save time. Alright, so now that it's done, it says all done, power off. So we're gonna go ahead and enter, power that off. So it's powered off. I'm gonna close that because we won't no longer need that at the moment. So I'm just plugging the power supply out, and I'm gonna plug it back in. It's gonna take a moment just to come back up. Alright, so it's back up, and all by the wireless connection that we installed earlier. So I'm just gonna log back in. Alright guys, so for proof, I want to let you see that the SD card is no longer plugged in. See if you can see that. We don't have the SD card no longer plugged in. I'm just going to give you guys a close-up so you guys can see. I no longer have the SD card plugged in, and this is directly, this is now being powered up by wireless connection. So we have the wireless install and also the built-in memory chip on here. So everything is now installed in this board. So we no longer need the SD card or the Ethernet cable, right? So we're gonna go ahead and switch to the desktop capture. We can go ahead and open it. As you see, it's up. We're gonna type in our username and password. And there we go. So now it's officially on install on the board itself. No SD card needed. And so now we can go ahead and run all the typical updates. So before we do that, I'm gonna go ahead and launch the browser for Fluid, and there we go. So we do have Fluid working. We're gonna check if there's any updates that we need to run. So I'm gonna go ahead and check for updates here. And what you would do if there's any updates, see, like you have an OS package update where there's a ton of stuff to update. So we can click on that and let it update all of the OS and all the packages, and make sure that we are on the latest software system as far as Klipper, Fluid, and Moonraker. So it's going ahead and check, but once that's done, we just hit update it, and then you just connect it like you typically would. You go in, do your menu.config to create the firmware for each particular board that you may be using, or your MCU in this case with Klipper, and you get your serial, you put it into the printer.config, you connect, and then you move on from there. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, how easy that was. So hopefully you guys find this video informative. And yes, I wanted to share that. So I'll call this part two, T95 Mini part two, of how to install it. And again, give you some tips and some tricks. I hope this video was useful to you guys that may want to look at a Raspberry Pi alternative. And again, I did a walkthrough of how to install Klipper, Moonsail, Moonraker. I mean, sorry, Mainsail and Fluid. So yeah, guys. So I hope that you enjoyed the video. Remember to give a thumbs up, a like, subscribe, and again, appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.